I bust a hole in my pants. I had to get it fixed. He sold it in an hour. I called him Taylor Swift. But seriously, why is she re-recording all her albums? What's up, y'all? It's your Intrepid Songwriter chronicling my adventures as a songwriter, because seriously, who does that? Today, we're gonna do another video on T-Swizzle. We need to understand, why is Taylor Swift re-recording her studio albums? Because you need to understand all the ins and the outs and the ups and the downs of what's going on with her. Because if you're a songwriter, producer, if you own a record label, it affects you too. If you're the singer on a song, if you're the voice on a track, this affects you too. So pay attention. I'm gonna break this article down for you. Okay, so it says that, explain why Taylor Swift is re-recording her studio albums and what it says about copyright battles with mega musical labels. Now that opening paragraph is repeated in the article, so let's jump right in. 2019, widely acclaimed singer-songwriter Taylor Swift announced her intention to re-record her first 6 studio albums, released between 2006 and 2017, initially produced by Big Machine Records, an independent record label headquartered in Nashville, US. First thing you need to understand is that when you sign a contract with a major label, sometimes indie labels, but definitely with major labels, when they pay for those sound recordings, they own them. And so many times the artists mistakenly think that they own them, but you don't. When the major label pays for you to go in the studio and record those tracks, they own the finished product. That's almost 108 tracks, and she's got some vault tracks. So she's trying to reclaim all the songs that she sung on her first 6 albums. But why? Here's why. When she was 15 years old, she signed a 6-album record deal with Big Machine Records, then owned by Scott Borchetta. Through this deal, Swift effectively gave Big Machine Records full ownership of the masters of all the music on her forthcoming albums, including videos and album art, licensing them to use it in any way they wished. You understand what the article just told you? It said not only did she give them full control of all the songs on those 6 CDs, those 6 records, the sound recordings, but also the videos, that's very key, that's gonna come up in a minute, and the album art. That means she doesn't own any of that. She doesn't own any of that. She's the lead artist in the video, and she's the lead voice on the track, but she doesn't own the finished product. This is very typical with a major label deal, and also very typical is that they signed her really, really young. And normally when you're that age, either you don't have a team of attorneys around you to understand what's going on, because you don't really understand what you're trading, that the money that they're spending on you to blow you up and make you famous and get you everywhere must be recouped. And they still control the rights, the ownership to the sound recordings. And in this case, that also includes the videos and the album art. So this is what can happen when a major label owns your masters, your sound recordings. Now, if you don't know what that word masters means, it means the master recordings. In other words, the final mix track that they use to put on the CD and that they use in the video. The official mixes released by the label. The final mix down to stereo 2-track that they use for that. Those are the master recordings. Her singing, playing, recording, all that mix down, that's the master recording. That's what that means. Now look at this right here. 2019, Scooter Braun, manager of Ithaca Holdings, bought Big Machine Records for $300 million. That means he correspondingly acquired the masters in Taylor Swift's 6 albums. So another company can come in and buy the company that owns your masters. So that means this new company, now they own your masters, and you got no say in that. Even someone on Taylor Swift's level. And so they didn't tell her. They had no notice of the transaction. Then those same masters, so remember, Scooter Braun came in from Ithaca, bought Big Machine Records, and then a private equity firm called Shamrock Holdings came in and bought them again. She got no say in that. She has nothing to say about that. She doesn't control any of that, and she doesn't see any of that money. Can you believe that? But that's the nature of the contract. That's why you got to understand the contract before you sign it, because what you're getting is fame and exposure and support from a major label budget. What you're signing away is your rights to the sound recordings of your music and all of those income streams. And if they put any type of image clause in there, your very image. Here is the album art and the videos. Her saving grace is that she was a songwriter. I'm going to explain that a little bit better in a minute. Record labels promote those deals, I'm back on the article, as a result of the risk taken and the vast amounts of money and time they invest usually. Her saving grace, or the sync rights, you never have to give up your songwriter's rights. They allowed her to retain the sync rights. Sync rights have to do with the musical composition. This is once again why you have to understand copyright, which is why you need to book a session with me. If you don't understand this stuff, I'll go over this stuff with you personally in detail. You need somebody to walk you through each one of your rights and what they mean. So there's the underlying song, which is the musical composition, and then there's the sound recording, what the labels owned and all the stuff that they sold, or the sound recording, the videos, and her album art. Because she's the songwriter and she wrote all of those songs, she was able to retain her ownership in the musical composition. That's the underlying song. Think of that as your song on paper. Think of that as your song on paper. The musical composition is your song on paper. The sound recordings is a particular recording of one particular performance of that song. The musical composition has its own separate copyright. Your song on paper, melody and lyrics, and sometimes arrangement, has its own separate copyright. So in other words, if we never record that song, with that song being on paper, it still has, used to be called a PA, or a performing arts. It just means the sheet music, the song on paper, the melody and the lyrics, and sometimes the arrangement. That is separate. A sound recording is a particular performance of that song recorded, and you can have unlimited numbers of sound recordings. So in other words, you can have one song and you can have 10 different versions of it, both by the original artist and as many cover artists as want to cover it. Each one of those individual sound recordings has its own copyright, okay? Very important that you understand that. So she was able to retain her sync rights. Sync rights have to do with the right to license your musical composition, your underlying song, your melody, lyrics, and sometimes arrangement to be synced to a video or audio visual or some type of motion picture element. We're going to sync this song to this element, this video motion picture element. Those are called sync rights. Now listen very carefully. Sync rights belong to the owner of the musical composition. It belongs to whoever owns the underlying song, the song on paper. That's a sync right. For them to take the track, the sound recording, and sync it to the video requires a separate license, and that's called a master use license. So that means you need two licenses. You need one license to sync the song to the video, and then if you want to use the track, the particular sound recording, you need a separate license. That means you have to ask the permission of the owner of the musical composition for the rights to sync the song, and then you have to ask the permission of the owner of the track or the sound recording to sync that particular recording to the video. Two separate copyrights, two separate licenses. That's how complex this gets. What she was able to do, because she held the sync licenses, is she started to block the songs being used in the video, which you can do, because she was saying, I do not give you permission to sync my song to a video. The song owner, the copyright owner of the underlying composition or the song gets to say that, not the sound recording. That's a master use license. So since then, it says she's developed a robust IB portfolio, and she's exercised her rights not only to trademark album titles and famous phrases, but also trademark other key elements that are part of her brand and personality, like the names of her 3 famous cats. So in other words, she wised up. In other words, she said in that first deal, I'll let y'all take, my album art and the videos and all the different times. This time she's saying, I'm going to get to trademark to my album titles, my phrases, my cats, as much as I can own myself. Because her brand, her name has such a great commercial value that if you own the rights to anything with Taylor Swift on it, that's millions of dollars, guaranteed. She has fought massive legal battles, such as with Apple Music in 2015, rallying for the protection of artists' rights to fair compensation for their work. Now, that was her famous fight about streaming royalties, okay? And also with Spotify and Pandora, because streaming royalties are tenths of pennies, not a lot of money at all. 2018, she signed a deal with Universal Music Group. As per this deal, she would continue to own all her masters moving forward. So she wised up. So the second deal she signs in 2018, when she's achieved the status of she's a superstar, she said that I'm not going to sign unless I get to own the master. Smart move. She wised up. Now, 2021 of last year, she re-recorded Taylor's version of her first album, Fearless. 20 previously released tracks and 7 unreleased tracks. 27 tracks. As of April 2021, the album has reportedly sold 500,000 copies worldwide. Her album, Red Taylor's version, recently re-released on November 12th. Re-recording her albums means that she will be creating new masters, those that she will have full ownership of. This move in no way guarantees that the original versions of her albums, those owned by Shamrock Holdings, will cease to exist. In other words, just because she's making this new stuff and selling this new stuff, the original stuff is still available because she still doesn't own it. She still does not own the sound recordings, the videos, or the album art off those first 6. The deal she signed with Universal in 2018 says she owns everything going forward, but she still doesn't own those first 6. So just because she's putting out re-recorded versions with masters that she owns does not mean that they have to stop selling the original versions. One more time. It does not mean that they have to stop selling the original versions of her music. Shamrock Holdings will continue to own, use, and earn revenue on those songs through streaming platforms and sampling, amongst many other uses that do not require synchronization licenses. Again, this is why you need to hire me, because there's a lot. It's more than I could ever do in 10 videos if you want me to explain to you all the different ways you can make money with the music. But I've discovered a lot of artists don't know the basic ways. They don't know the basic ways. So basically what this is saying is that owning the sound recordings, there's the two that they're talking about the master use license, which means to sync the sound recording to the video, not the song, but the actual track. And the second one is the digital streaming royalties, meaning every time that song is played and transmitted digitally. That means on the internet, that means a live stream broadcast, that means like on Sirius radio, a digital transmission, not an analog radio, a digital transmission. There are royalties generated from all that. And they still get to keep all that money from all those original master recordings because they still own them, and she hasn't been able to get them back, and they don't have to stop putting them out there just because she's putting stuff out. So she's saying that what she's doing, what the re-recorded albums have achieved and will continue to achieve, as admitted by Swift, is to diminish the value of her old master. Maybe, somewhat, but if you look at it on the flip, it actually, on some level, increases the value because now the original recordings are more valuable because now they have competition. So I understand what she's trying to do. I understand that she's saying that she's got this new stuff and it's gonna undercut the value of that original stuff, maybe in a minuscule way. But I just want you to think about this. Now that she's created her own set, aren't the original ones more valuable? Like an original book, and then the writer rewrites it so they can keep all the royalties this time, and then they release an independent book, okay? A reprint or a new version. That's cool, but doesn't that make this first one more valuable? Can you see that? So it's not that I don't understand what she's doing. I'm saying it might have, in the long run, the opposite effect because people that are like B2B, business-to-business transactions are most likely going to want her original ones. Her fans will want anything she puts out with her name on it, okay? So there'll definitely be money coming in there. And then the other thing is who's charging more? Is Shamrock Holdings, what are their license fees for using those original tracks? And what are Taylor Swift's license fees for using her new tracks? That makes a difference too. So let's look at what we can learn from this article. Principle number 1, understand what you're signing when you sign a major label deal. Understand that in exchange for the fame and the exposure, they're keeping the rights to the sound recordings and your image, if that's in the contract, and all of the money. Because if you don't know anything about a major label deal, artists get paid last. Principle number 2, her saving grace in this whole scenario is that she's the songwriter. You don't ever have to give up your songwriting rights. Let me say that one more time in case you missed it. You don't ever have to give up your songwriting rights. When you write a song, all of the copyright protections and all the copyright rights associated with that song belong to you. You don't have to give them up unless you choose to, unless you choose to sell them. Principle number 3, Another one of her saving graces that the article is really not mentioning full blast is that she could afford to re-record all that music, okay? Many artists cannot afford to re-record their song. And many times by the time they can, that re-recorded version doesn't have the same value on the market like they wanted it to. For example, Prince did that with 1999. There was that original version that Warner Brothers earned, and then Prince did a remix many years later, and he had like 7 different mixes, and it was really, really cool. But I don't know if those remixes sold like the original 1999 track. So again, she was able to afford to record all of that music all over again, and many artists cannot do that. And finally, principle number 4, she understood what sync rights meant. She understood that as a songwriter, that meant that they have to get permission from her to use her melodies and her lyrics in a video or any type of audiovisual material, not the master use license, which is the track. The record label or whoever owns the track can grant that license, but you have to get, it's 2 licenses. You have to get the sync license from the songwriter or whoever owns the rights to the song to sync that melody and those lyrics to the video. 2 separate licenses. So she just stopped granting the sync licenses to shut any other income they were getting down from the granting of the sync license, because she alone controls that as the songwriter, okay? You see how important all this stuff is? That's why I keep hammering the same stuff over and over again, because I know it's complex, I know it's complicated, but even at Taylor Swift's level, you need to be on your game about copyrights, publishing, and royalties. So that's why you need to book a session with me. Remember, the first 15 minutes is free. Book a session with me and let me know what your struggle is, and then I will map out a strategy to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. I will map out a strategy to show you each one of the rights and the income streams that are available to be sure you're getting your maximum money, all right? So I got lots more videos coming up with stuff in the news. I'm gonna talk about more Taylor Swift, stuff with the Jets. I'm gonna talk about Travis Scott. A lot of stuff is coming up, okay? So subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and ring the bell so you know when I drop a new video that something new is out. Follow me on Instagram, the Intrepid Songwriter on Instagram, because I always put my video links there too. Follow me on Twitter, and follow me on my Facebook page, because everything I do, I'm dropping on all my social media channels, because I want to help you get paid. I want to help you get educated. I want to help you know your rights so you don't get ripped off and you understand the contracts that you're signing. All right? I'll see you in the next video. Go watch it right now. Intrepid Songwriter, out.